Hello, and welcome to the Unplug Meditation Podcast. I love sharing the stories of our incredible teachers, and one of them is Peter Oppermann. Peter he's been working at Unplug for a while now and has a mind-blowing class called Brain Massage. And it's one of these classes that in the real world, there was always a waiting list for. And now digitally, people are doing it from all over the globe. And he's also on the Unplugged Meditation app. And I'm so thrilled to hear the backstory of how Peter Oppermann became Peter Oppermann. So welcome to the Unplugged Podcast, Peter.
Thank you, Susie. Such an honor to be part of this conversation and to be part of the story of Unplugged Meditation.
I'm thrilled to ask you, I really want to hear about your journey, how you got into this, what you were doing before, what you're doing, where it went and now where it is. And I would love the entire journey because this is really about the people who meditate with you every single day, being able to really understand who is Peter Oppermann.
Okay, let's lift the blanket of secrecy or this secret that is visible in plain sight. Sometimes I like to introduce myself as a German engineer turned meditation teacher because it highlights this journey that I've been on personally, and the journey still continues. It's an ever evolving journey, like all of our life stories. And just what it means to be a German engineer as a mindset. I was very much brought up in a very scientific, a very secular household. But I was always a deep thinker, and I was always wondering about the deeper meaning of life. And one of the questions that really was riveting my conscience was, what is my purpose? What is my purpose in life? What's my calling? And believe it or not, that was my very first workshop that I taught just as a private citizen back in Berlin, even before the wall came down in Berlin, how to find your life's purpose. And I just was synthesizing all the information that I had received through all the books that I was reading at the time. The real breakthrough for me really happened when I participated in my first Sunday meditation retreat. It was like a half day of a Swiss meditation teacher, Vipassana meditation teacher, who came through Berlin. My yoga teacher was kind of pulled me aside. Peter, you should really listen to this guy, Fred von Allmen. I think you will resonate with him. In German, it's called Achtsamkeit, mindfulness. And so I tried it out. And I was blown away, Susie, when I first did my first official mindfulness meditation, because I felt, oh my God, finally someone is speaking my language. I have arrived. I have come home. And somehow it felt like all of these instructions, the teachings, the worldview behind it, it sounded familiar to me. Nothing of these information was new. It really felt like I've done this before. It felt like literally like coming home, and what a relief. So from that day onward, I was really deeply into it, and I decided to build a lifestyle around my practice where I could really focus on putting mindfulness and a mindful lifestyle first, put that really at the center of my life, build a career around it, attract a life partner around it, attract an identity. And I also immediately knew one day I want to be able to share a little bit about the benefits that these practices have on my life. I immediately knew that, oh my goodness, this information is life-changing and if it's life-changing for me, it must be life-changing for other people as well. And yet I always felt intimidated because I had the great privilege of then studying with more and more really very qualified teachers that now have published many best-selling books. And I felt I was like in their shadows and never being able to live up to their depth and humor and power to transmit. So I actually kept a very low profile. I switched careers from engineering to woodworking as a way to bring mindfulness into my own livelihood. Building, in today's language, you would brand it as mindful furniture. At that time, I was building Japanese shoji screens, so-called these sliding doors, as a way to, in the process of selecting the right lumber and then sanding the wood and putting the oil on and gluing the paper on, all of this is a very meditative process. These were all kind of high-end custom pieces. And I was just loving the way how I could practice meditation, mindfulness, my breathing, paying attention to all the senses, to the smell of the wood, to the tactile experience of touching and going through the different pieces of lumber, installing it, and the sweat, everything that you go through when you go through building something with your hands. The company then became successful, allowed me to move from Berlin to New York City, open up a shop in Brooklyn in the Navy Yard. And then down the road, I skipped studying meditation. I went on longer retreats, up to 3 months in silence in Massachusetts at a place called Insight Meditation Society, studied under Joseph Goldstein, Jack Kornfield on the West Coast in Spirit Rock, traveled to several Asian countries, Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, to study there with different teachers. And when I was in New York, I came across a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Geshe Michael Roach, who opened me up to the possibility how to apply these principles in business, how to use these principles of mindfulness, and beyond that also in emptiness and karma, which are deeper concepts that require a little bit more of study, but how you can apply these very powerful metaphysical principles in business and run a successful business, which Geshe Michael has done multiple times. He's a multiple serial entrepreneur, fascinating human being, speaks 7 languages fluently. And so he inspired me to try out these principles. So I went out to the South Bronx of all places. I was living in the Upper West Side at the time on 85th Street in my little 4th floor walk-up apartment with an outside deck. I must say, I was lucky enough. But I had the idea, how could I try these principles of karmic management and let these principles of the core tenement is that whatever you want for yourself in terms of whatever it is in life, in this case, business success, by helping someone else to become successful who normally doesn't have proper support. So whatever you want for yourself, you first want to give it away to someone else. So after I had that intention, things came together pretty quickly, and I started a social enterprise in the Bronx, teaching ex-prisoners on their challenging transition from a life behind bars back into society, teaching them mindfulness skills as well as assembly and basic woodworking skills, something that was in my wheelhouse. And that organization really became an important part of my own journey. For the first time, teaching individuals, seeing real life results, transforming lives of people who were disenfranchised, who were not supported in the way that they should be. And that laid the foundation for my own transition from becoming a lay practitioner to transitioning and becoming a teacher myself. And then lastly, it actually took an ocean wave in the Hamptons in a very awkward attempt to trying to surf, where I was knocked off my surfboard on Gibson Beach and hit my shoulder in such a profound way that my humerus bone was shattered. And the moment I was carried off the beach in the stretcher by the ambulance that was called, I knew, okay, Peter, this is basically the last straw that's breaking the camel's back, so to speak, to not waste my time anymore and to now really do what I came here to do, which is to share the gifts of meditation, to help people and give it my own language and voice. And through that incident, I knew that I had to stop my woodworking career and somehow uh, dare a new start, which then led me to my move to Los Angeles about 7 years ago, 2013, and try it out, what it's like to be a teacher. And then starting very humble beginnings. And then a few years later, you invited me to come on board for Unplug Meditation. I did a few more trainings in the meantime. And since then, really enjoying this process of sharing my very own personal experience as a former engineer and scientist and student of life, and bringing these ancient wisdom teachings that are transformational into modern day lives.
Wow, that's an amazing journey. Um, I'm blown away by that story. I just love that. And your classes are magical. They're not average meditation classes. And I'd like to kind of talk to you a little bit about that. You constantly are trying to bring things to the next level. You bring in, possibly because you were an engineer, technology into your meditations. You were the first person to bring in those noise canceling headsets. You're always searching out new music. You were the first one to figure out how to work the Zoom, and then you shared it with everybody else. Can you tell me a little bit about where you are right now as a teacher and where you see things going for you?
Mm. Yeah, so maybe a word about technology. So actually, when I was an engineer, I went into engineering with the intention to use technology for, believe it or not, for the betterment of humanity. I had very lofty um, inspirations, aspirations at that time in my early 20s. I really wanted to find the best technologies available to help humanity address the big challenges that we have as a species. And then when I discovered meditation, I saw, oh my goodness, we actually already have the technology. It's actually inside of us. It's living between our ears. It's pulsing in our hearts if we are only able to access our innate technology. So that was kind of my conversion from using outer technology and really focusing on what we already have. To the second part of your question, with the technology that I'm using to enhance the meditative experience, there's a whole array of amazing technologies available of them. A lot of them work on the basic principles of brainwave entrainment. So as you know, our brain oscillates at certain frequency depending on the state of our being. The more anxious we are, the more the brainwave frequency goes into higher frequencies. The more relaxed and resourced and in a state of coherence we are, they kind of find the sweet spot in the so-called theta brainwave state around 7 to 9 hertz. So since most of us, especially if we rush into a meditation class and we are busy, for a lot of people, it's difficult to get into the theta state like at once. So fortunately, there's technology available for this process called brainwave entrainment through either acoustic or visual signals or tactile signals, where we can literally invite our brain to slow down. It's like coming home to the most comforting hug, where we can immediately, okay, now I can relax, now I can feel home, I can let go of everything else that's making me busy and anxious right now. So one of the most powerful ways for brainwave entrainment is through a process called binaural beats, which is a very smart, actually very simple way to kind of trick the brain into slowing down and finding that sweet spot of the theta brainwave state. That's why I'm using the headsets, because you need a stereo signal. You can't just play it through a loudspeaker system in a room. It needs to be a dedicated stereo signal where you need headsets. And these binaural beats just do deliver that. And there are beautiful composers like Murray Hidari with Mind Travel Music and others who make binaural beats sound really beautiful and wonderful. And I remember the time, it was about 3.5 years ago when I first introduced the headsets and the binaural beats into my classes at Unplug, how immediately I felt the whole group was held by these beautiful acoustics themselves, and make the work as a guide, as a teacher, much easier, where the room is already held in a powerful way. There are other ways of using technology through visual stimuli, through using certain videos, colors, kaleidoscopic images. There are other acoustic ways, like a vibrational ways to interact. There are ways to slightly work with substances that are completely legal to kind of let the brain, the nervous system slow down. And ultimately, I believe there's something also very powerful, evocative in the human voice. So for me as a teacher, when I drop into a theta state, into a connected state, and kind of communicate the state of being through the tone of my voice, there's something that is being transmitted that can be picked up by the audience. So there's a whole range of technologies. We could have a whole session about them, obviously. But in my understanding, and if you want to try it at home, if you're listening to this binaural beats, it's a powerful way to have very predictable result to shift your brainwave state.
What's your personal practice like?
So my personal practice is interesting. So a lot of people know me through the work of Future Self, which we can talk a little bit more maybe. So in my personal practice, after all these 25 plus years that I've been on, having a very regular meditation practice and teaching meditation has become very simple. It's literally just becoming still, and for me then to invite the presence of my future self into my experience. It's as if you can invite a very beautiful, calming, wise presence, to let that come into your being, to let that merge with you. So since my future self and I, we've become best friends. He's like an old friend, a brother, a mentor to me. So the moment I call him in, there's something like a warm, comfortable blanket, like another presence that's coming over me. And then I just hang out with him and literally just sit still and let the soothing, calming presence really root into my being, let my cells resonate with the presence of my future self. And so then we just hang out basically for as long as I want to. And usually there are also some kind of you may call it downloads or insights that come through, like where I remember, okay, so that's really what's really important in my life. So I get my daily briefing, so to speak, from my future self. Sometimes I take notes, I journal afterwards. One process that I teach is to then, after you meditate, you do this journal practice, and then choose one inspired action. So something that became clear during your meditation, something that I really want to prioritize and move forward creatively in my life, to make that a practice to myself and say, okay, today I'm going to move the needle forward in that particular area. And sometimes even work with an accountability partner where we work in tandem, someone where I share my inspired action with, and he or she is sharing theirs. So we kind of keep in a relationship about bridging what we know from our state of being and to translate that into a state of doing. And through that, you see some beautiful results shaping in your life. And now I can say that to a large degree, the way how I live outwardly is an expression of my future self, which then is an incentive to go deeper into this meditative lifestyle. So that meditation is less something that I do for 20 minutes in the morning. It's more a way of being, how I move through my days.
I love that. And let's talk about future self because, first of all, I've done all of your meditations. I love them. One of my favorite meditations, too, is future self. If I have to pick one, it would be that one because it's always different. My future self is always different every single time. Yours, it sounds like, is the same guy who you're hanging out with and he's your mentor. So let's talk about your big, bodacious goals. So, for instance, your future self is, well, when I do my future self, it's kind of like the outcome of what I hope my life will be. So, I'd like to hear about your future self and where is he now?
Hmm. Good question. Where is he now? Let me check. He's outside on my deck, actually. He's
you
waving
know,
at me.
but you know
Hey,
what I
wanna come
mean?
in?
Like, where do we, at the end of the rainbow, where are we?
Hmm. Well, to be totally transparent, honest with you. So my future self is just a man who's maybe a little bit older than me, maybe 3, 5 years older max. But he has figured out something really beautiful. He has figured out to really let his life be led by love. So he's a man who's completely prioritizing love in his life, and he's completely transparent and in integrity with that. So everything that he does, he speaks, what he interacts, whatever it is led by love. So I'm clearly not there yet, but it's beautiful to have that as a constant reminder. And when we spoke earlier about it, about my personal practice, when I sit with my in meditation and call in my future self, I literally sit in the vibration of love and integrity. And that's a beautiful qualities to cultivate over time. So he's a constant reminder of kind of upping my game, of reconnecting, of remembering, and to deepen that trust and then creatively express myself. What, not just to meditate, but how could I translate my future self with his message of love and integrity into something practical in my business, in my coaching practice, in next creative event that I may be planning, to translate this state of being into a state of doing. He
I love
also, maybe there are lots of details to it. Usually, I like in these guided meditations, and when I guide a group to meet their future selves, always journey along. So I always get something new and exciting out of the meditation that I do that keeps it interesting for me. So there's usually, a reminder, or he drives a different car, or he has like these different homes that are really cool. Sometimes it's more like a jungle vibe, very simple and beautiful and earthy. Sometimes it's super like architectural and modern and clean. He sometimes he shows up in this really cool Manhattan apartment. Sometimes he's like he's not even there yet anymore. He's almost like already left the planet, but there's still a good vibe that he left behind. Um, he's definitely a published author, something that I, as my present self, is still aspiring to do. So there's always a nice mix of a confirmation, a reminder of what's really true and important in my own life, and also a little bit of a delta of something that I want to evolve into.
I love that so much. Um, what's been the thing? that has been the biggest takeaway from teaching an unplug? Like, if you were to say the life lesson you've carried kind of from either the physical unplug or the virtual unplug.
Mm, that's a beautiful question. I could go in so many different directions. So where to start? Um, I think in the most profound way, Susie, um, these teachings of karma and emptiness really point to the fact that there comes a time in our lives where we need to make a decision in that the acts and the words that we put out, that we share, really need to be in alignment with who we are. We can't afford to make these compromises, at least for me, to say, okay, this is just for work and I'm kind of selling myself in order to pay the bills. For me, there's as I said, to be authentic with my future self, I need to be in full integrity with what I believe in, what I do, what I speak, and how I affect the people around me. So having the opportunity to positively affect the members of the unplugged communities that come from all walks of life, who maybe have just lost a loved one, or who want to deepen their relationship with themselves or develop self-love, all of just coming out from a breakup or dealing with a disease, whatever people are dealing with that come to unplug meditation. So to be someone who has the great honor and privilege to help people on a weekly basis and be a positive influence in people's lives and plant these positive karmic seeds, knowing that by generously giving, that I will receive down the road. And that's kind of surfing that wave of benevolence and making it a living, making it a lifestyle, to be helpful, to be a positive influence in other people's, to have that voice and influence to others is such a privilege. And I know that that is the long-term sustainable path for my own happiness. So by making other people happy, that is the source of my own happiness. So that's a deep honor that I feel that I can provide through the opportunity to teach at Unplug. Um, and another level, there's something as a teacher. We need to have students. As students need to have teachers, teachers also need to have students. It's an interdependent relationships. There wouldn't be teachers without students, and there wouldn't be students without teachers. So we need each other. So I'm deeply grateful that that there are students where I can experience myself as a teacher, and also through the opportunity of having to show up, wanting to show up every week, coming up with a new topic, something that's relevant, that's important. After a while, after these 4+ years that I've been with Unplug Meditation, to just trust that, all I need to do is turn on the microphone or sit in front of a room. Hopefully that will happen again soon. And knowing that something will come out of my mouth that is hopefully helpful, and to have that routine, that trust, the humor, the lightness, the faith, that by the simple habit formation of doing this again and again, that is something that I know I can deliver and do for people.
It's so interesting because the beginning of this conversation, you talked about your teacher's message to you and your life lesson when you got into an accident on the beach in the Hamptons. And it seems as if you've actually experienced the message of what you were supposed to do: live in alignment, give back to others, share. It's pretty beautiful. Wow. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it and it's funny maybe also for our listeners. I really needed that kick in the ass. Excuse my French here, with a German accent. I needed that. Oops, my video is a little funny.
Yeah, it's okay. It makes it
Okay.
even future selfie.
Yeah. Right.
You've got
Okay.
a reflective beard, and I love it.
Yeah. So for all of our listeners right now, you may feel stuck somewhere in your life. You feel, oh, I'm stuck at a job or in a relationship or life situation where I really don't belong, but I don't have the courage to step out into the unknown. I don't know if I can sustain myself or who I would be, in an unknown situation. I was at that place. I was afraid to let go of the safety of a career that I've built, but I knew that was no longer mine. And I needed that ocean wave to knock me off my board and hurt me in order to sit still, in order to remember what's really important, and then say, I'm not going to waste any more of my time. I'm now going to take this leap of faith and do what my heart is telling me, has been telling me for so many years. So sometimes these transitions are not as elegant or thoughtful or well planned out. Sometimes we need these hard knocks in life to put our lives on new train tracks. And I would recommend anyone who is going through a challenge, and these times that we live in right now, they are full of challenges, but also opportunities. It's a time of disruption to try out something new. And in my own case, I needed that wave to hurt me, to knock me out of my routines, out of my safety, out of my comfort zone, to try out something new. And if I wouldn't have tried it out, we wouldn't have these conversations, and I wouldn't have the chance to affect so many lives, and hopefully in a positive wave.
Yeah, I definitely can attest to the fact that there are so many people who have been changed, touched, and enhanced by you. So I so appreciate just all that you give and the richness of what you give to Unplug, the studio, the app, but even just to the world in general, because I know you do a lot of privates and you have a whole other side of you that's independent of Unplug, your connection with Murray Hickory on the beach and these huge, epic, amazing classes that you lead. One thing that I would love to do with you, if possible, is take your Find My Life's Purpose class that you started teaching in the beginning and do that again. Would you be interested in doing like a workshop like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
We
I mean,
should
that
do
is
that on New Year's, like on New Year's Eve or something fun like that. Let's talk about that.
absolutely.
So, is there any question that I didn't ask you that might be interesting for you to share now?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I'm walking on thin ice now, but I think the question on why meditate even, why is it even important to meditate? I would like to explore that question with you, and maybe we can both have a little investigation on that topic.
Yeah, I mean, for me, meditation is the answer to almost all. I mean, we read so much about the scientific benefits of meditation and how it can actually enhance you in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. And I don't understand why everyone is not doing this all the time, because it is such a life changer. It's such an enhancement to everyone's life. Maybe go without the virtual background. I know that we're seeing you, you're a blue sky. Um, we'll edit that part. But yeah, so for me, meditation is
Shall we
everything.
shall we stop for a moment, Susie?
Yeah,
And
let's pause.
yeah, I was born in Ghana, in West Africa, of all places. My father was working at the UNESCO at that time, teaching African teachers how to become better at teaching, especially in math and physics. Those were his strong points. And during that time, I joined my family. I was born in Ghana during that very special time, and that may have set a precedent for my own future career, as all of my family members, they're still in Germany. I'm the only one who is living an international, kind of more global life. So something was already planted at the very beginning of my life. Then I grew up in Germany, and was very fortunate that my parents sent me during my high school senior year as part of a international school exchange to a family in Los Angeles, in Pasadena, where I spent the whole year with them and went to school. And they were wonderful people, very, very hospitable and generous. And almost every weekend we went camping in different parts of the Western states. So I got to see a lot of the beauty, the incredible beauty of this country, which kind of planted the seeds later on to move here to California and to call this my home. Then I went to Berlin when I decided to study engineering, as a decision to really be at a culturally invigorating, interesting environment. And it happened to be the time right before 89, 87, when in 89, the Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain fell. So it was a fascinating time. I moved directly to East Germany at the time, to East Berlin, to experience this massive peaceful revolution from inside and experience the fall of the Iron Curtain, and to witness both parts of Germany coming back together in the heart of Berlin, and being part of all of that was a fascinating time. So I've seen a lot of change in my life, which has been very inspiring. I also will say that a big part of my personal journey, also this deep thirst, this hunger for truth and wanting to understand the world, also is a product of a trauma as a result of my parents separating, and the divorce that I experienced as a child when I was 12 really put me on this lifelong journey to wanting to understand, and then finding that there is a rich inner world that I could find, and find healing and understanding and peace inside of myself. So that actually, this trauma, initiated my own personal journey of healing, and then eventually sharing this with others.
I have to say that for me, the greatest gift of Unplug is learning that what makes an incredible teacher is actually the trauma, is actually an experience that alters their world when they find healing through meditation and then are able to share that. That has been the thing that's changed everything. And I want you to listen to Shirley Sue Lehman's podcast interview. And I think you'll then want to have a great conversation with her after that. This has been such an incredible talk. I love doing these podcasts because I get to really connect with the person behind the healing. And you do so much for so many. And I just feel so lucky that you're still with us at Unplug. You're still upping your game every single time, and your classes are legendary. So for those of you who are listening to this podcast, please make sure to check out Peter Oppermann on the Unplug app, Peter Oppermann at Unplug Studios. He also has a private practice too, where you can check him out. What's your social handles?
It's just my name, Peter Oppermann. Very simple.
Keep it simple. That's what it's all about. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Susie, for doing the amazing work that you do, and by creating a structure, platform to let us speaker as teachers share our wisdom and our gifts with the world. So thank you for all the heart, with a T at the end, the hard work that you do.